The plant in the pretty pot at your local garden center could put you in the hospital. Or it could save your life. The trouble is nobody on that sales floor knows which one it is. Somewhere between the rise of big box stores and the death of the family herbalist, we handed over everything we once knew about the plants growing right outside our doors. Our grandparents kept this knowledge the way they kept everything important quietly, practically, passed down at the kitchen table. We stopped listening. And now that knowledge is nearly gone. This video gives some of it back. 20 plants being sold right now at garden centers across America. Some of them heal. Some of them kill. Most of them do both, depending on what you know. And here is what most people walking those garden center aisles have absolutely no idea about. Stay with me for number 17. It has been used to treat one of the most common conditions in America for over 2,000 years. It is sitting right now in the ornamental section, labeled simply as a decorative annual. Nobody is telling you what it actually does. And number 20. The plant most garden centers sell as a cheerful patio flower contains a compound so toxic that a single leaf has put adults in the ICU. Is one of the top 10 causes of accidental plant poisoning in the United States. And is marketed to families with children. If you believe the old ways carried wisdom that the modern world traded away too cheaply, hit subscribe. This channel is for people who choose to remember what the world forgot. Here are 20 dangerous plants sold at garden centers right now, ranked from remarkable to absolutely unforgettable. Number 1. Lavender, Lavandula angustifolia. The ancient Egyptians were wrapping their dead in lavender-soaked linen before Rome was even a city. Written records from Egypt around 2500 BCE reference a fragrant blue plant used in the mummification process. The Romans later carried it across their empire, soldiers using it to clean wounds in the field, calling it lavandula from the Latin word for washing. By the mid-20th century, lavender had been reduced to a candle scent. Pharmaceutical companies introduced synthetic sedatives and sleep aids in the 1950s and 60s, and the practical knowledge of lavender as medicine quietly stepped aside. Today, it is one of the top-selling garden plants in America, and almost no one who buys it understands what they are actually bringing home. Research confirms that linalool, the primary compound in lavender essential oil, has measurable anxiolytic effects, meaning it genuinely reduces anxiety. A clinical preparation called silexin has been studied in multiple European trials and shown performance comparable to pharmaceutical options for generalized anxiety, with far fewer side effects. Dry a small handful of lavender buds and place them in a cloth sachet inside your pillowcase. This is exactly what rural European households did for centuries before sleeping pills existed. The volatile oils release gradually through the night. Your grandmother had a name for this. She kept it in the linen closet. We forgot to ask her why. Number 2. Rosemary, Salvia rosmarinus. Ancient Greek students wore rosemary garlands while studying for examinations. This was not superstition. It was observation passed down through generations, starting as early as 500 BCE in Mediterranean cultures. Greek physicians prescribed it for memory and mental clarity, and the practice spread across the Roman Empire and into medieval European monasteries. The cognitive properties of rosemary were largely set aside when pharmaceutical cognitive research moved toward synthetic compounds in the late 20th century. Today you buy it for pasta. The label on the pot says culinary herb. There is no mention of the studies. Studies show that even inhaling rosemary aroma increases speed and accuracy on cognitive tasks. Research published in Therapeutic Advances in Psychopharmacology found that participants in a rosemary-scented room performed measurably better on memory tests. The compound 1,8-cineol crosses the blood-brain barrier and inhibits the breakdown of acetylcholine, the same mechanism targeted by pharmaceutical Alzheimer's treatments. Crush a sprig of fresh rosemary between your palms and inhale deeply before focused work. Or steep 2 sprigs in hot water for 5 minutes and drink it as a tea before mentally demanding tasks. This is one of the oldest study aids in human history. Rosemary essential oil in concentrated form is a known convulsant. Cases of seizure have been reported in children and adults who consumed rosemary oil directly. The culinary herb is safe. The concentrated oil is not. We spent decades developing synthetic memory drugs. The original version was growing in every kitchen garden in ancient Greece. Number 3. Chamomile, Matricaria chamomilla. Chamomile is mentioned in the Ebers Papyrus, an Egyptian medical document dating to approximately 1550 BCE, one of the oldest complete medical texts ever discovered. It was used for fever reduction, calming intestinal spasms, and treating wounds. The ancient Egyptians considered it sacred enough to dedicate it to Ra, their sun god. When pharmaceutical antacids and anti-anxiety medications became widely available after World War II, the corner was turned on plant-based digestive and calming treatments. Chamomile was pushed to the back of the tea aisle and labeled as a mild relaxant, a description so understated it borders on dishonest. Documented evidence indicates that apigenin, the key flavonoid in chamomile, binds to the same GABA receptors in the brain targeted by benzodiazepine drugs. Research also confirms significant anti-inflammatory and antispasmodic effects on the digestive tract. A 2016 randomized study found regular chamomile extract use significantly reduced recurrence of generalized anxiety disorder symptoms after treatment ended. Steep 1 tablespoon of dried chamomile flowers, not a tea bag, in 8 ounces of boiling water for 10 minutes, covered, to retain the volatile oils. Drink this 30 minutes before bed or when digestive cramping begins. Chamomile is closely related to ragweed. People with ragweed allergies can have serious reactions, including anaphylaxis. This is not rare, it is consistently reported in allergy literature. Always check before recommending chamomile to someone with known plant allergies. This plant outlived every empire that discovered it and is still working exactly the same way it did in 1550 BCE. Number 4. Mint. The species. Mint appears in ancient Greek mythology. The plant is named after Mintha, a water nymph transformed by Persephone. But beyond mythology, mint was being used medicinally in China as far back as 2000 BCE, and it is recorded in ancient Egyptian medical texts almost as frequently as chamomile. Greek physician Dioscorides described over a dozen medicinal uses in his 1st century Texta Materia Medica. Mint became candy flavoring. It became chewing gum. The synthetic extraction of menthol moved into pharmaceutical topical creams and throat lozenges, and the knowledge of whole plant mint therapy quietly retired. Most Americans today think of mint as a flavor, not a medicine. Research confirms peppermint oil is one of the most thoroughly studied natural treatments for irritable bowel syndrome. Enteric-coated peppermint capsules have performed favorably compared to pharmaceutical antispasmodics in multiple clinical trials. Studies also show that topical peppermint oil is as effective as acetaminophen for tension headache relief. Crush 4 to 5 fresh peppermint leaves and steep in boiling water for 7 minutes. Drink for nausea, indigestion, or bloating. For headaches, rub a small amount of peppermint essential oil diluted in carrier oil directly on the temples and forehead. Never apply undiluted peppermint essential oil directly to the face of infants or young children. Menthol can suppress breathing reflexes in small children. This has caused serious respiratory incidents. Keep peppermint oil away from the faces of children under 2. Most Americans touch this plant every summer without knowing what it can do, and is growing wild in backyards across the entire country right now. Number 5. Echinacea. Echinacea purpurea. Echinacea was used by at least 14 Native American tribes across the Great Plains, including the Lakota, the Cheyenne, and the Comanche. Documentation from the 1800s records it being used for everything from toothaches to snake bites, with one of its most consistent uses being for fevers and infections. It was widely prescribed by American physicians in the late 1800s and early 1900s before antibiotics became available. When penicillin arrived in the 1940s, plant-based immune support was dismissed as folk medicine. American medical schools stopped teaching it almost entirely within a generation. In Germany, by contrast, echinacea remained in clinical use and is still listed in official German Commission e-monographs as an approved immune support herb. Studies show echinacea activates macrophages, the white blood cells responsible for frontline immune response. A Cochrane review of over 20 clinical trials found consistent evidence that echinacea reduces both the duration and severity of the common cold. The specific mechanism involves alkamides binding to cannabinoid receptors that regulate immune cell activity. Take echinacea tincture or capsule extract at the very first sign of illness, scratchy throat, unusual fatigue, early congestion. Take it for 7 to 10 days maximum. The traditional practice was not long-term daily use, but short-term, high-intensity immune support at the onset of infection. Before antibiotics, this was the front line. 14 Native American tribes knew it. American doctors used it for decades. Then we forgot, and Germany remembered for us. Number 6. Foxglove, Digitalis purpurea. Welsh folk healers called it fairy gloves and used it for heart conditions as early as the 9th century CE. It was Welsh herbalist tradition passed down through women practitioners, most of whom were never credited in formal medical history. In 1785, British physician William Withering published a landmark text documenting foxglove's cardiac effects after learning the formula from a local herbalist, a woman whose name was largely erased from the official account. The pharmaceutical industry isolated digoxin from foxglove and patented the synthesized form. The plant itself was pushed out of medicine and into the ornamental garden. Today, it is one of the most beautiful plants sold at garden centers and one of the most dangerous because almost nobody buying it knows what they are handling. Digoxin, derived directly from foxglove, remains in the modern pharmacopoeia as a heart medication prescribed to millions of Americans. Research confirms it regulates cardiac rhythm and strengthens heart contractions. This is not ancient guesswork, it is standard medicine derived entirely from this plant. Every part of this plant is toxic. Every part. Consuming even a small amount can cause life-threatening cardiac arrhythmia. Foxglove poisoning symptoms include visual disturbances, nausea, and a dangerous slowing or irregularizing of the heartbeat. Children are at extreme risk. If you grow this plant, treat it with the same caution you would any household chemical. A Welsh woman knew this in the 9th century. William Withering published her knowledge in 1785 and got the credit. The plant is still saving hearts today under a different name. Number 7. Lemon balm, Melissa officinalis. Paracelsus, the 16th century Swiss physician and alchemist who fundamentally shaped Western medicine, called lemon balm the elixir of life and used it as a central ingredient in his personal health regimen. Before Paracelsus, it appears in the writings of Arab physician Avicenna around 1000 CE, who described it as strengthening the heart and brain and lifting the spirits. Cultivation of lemon balm in European monastery gardens dates to at least 900 CE. Lemon balm was gradually displaced from Western medicine as synthetic anxiolytics and sleep aids took over the market in the second half of the 20th century. Today it is sold almost exclusively as a lemon-scented herb for cooking or as a pleasant addition to the patio garden. Its centuries of documented therapeutic use are almost never mentioned on the label. Research confirms lemon balm inhibits an enzyme called GABA transaminase, which breaks down the calming neurotransmitter GABA in the brain. This is the same general mechanism used by some pharmaceutical anti-anxiety drugs. Studies also document antiviral activity, particularly against the herpes simplex virus, with clinical research showing topical lemon balm cream significantly reducing healing time and recurrence of cold sores. Steep a generous handful of fresh lemon balm leaves in hot water for 10 minutes and drink in the evening for anxiety or insomnia. For cold sores, bruise fresh leaves and apply directly to the affected area. This is one of the most practically accessible remedies on this entire list. Paracelsus staked his professional reputation on this plant 500 years ago. The science now confirms exactly what he was seeing. Number 8. Comfrey, Symphytum officinale. Medieval English herbalists called it knit bone, and that name tells you everything. Comfrey was the bone fracture and wound treatment across the British Isles and Europe from at least the 12th century through the 19th. The Romans called it symphytum from the Greek word for grow together and used it in poultices for injured legionnaires. Documentation of its use spans over 2,000 years of continuous European and Near Eastern herbalism. In the 1980s, studies showed that comfrey root contains pyrrolizidine alkaloids that cause liver damage when consumed internally in large amounts over extended periods. The response from regulatory bodies was aggressive in many cases. It was removed from product shelves entirely, including topical preparations where the liver concern does not apply. The external healing use was collateral damage in the internal consumption warning. Research confirms that allantoin, the key compound in comfrey, promotes cell proliferation and tissue repair at a measurable rate. Multiple clinical trials of topical comfrey root extract for ankle sprains, back pain, and osteoarthritis have shown results comparable to pharmaceutical topical anti-inflammatories. The European Medicines Agency has formally approved comfrey root in topical preparations for exactly these uses. Apply a comfrey root poultice crushed fresh root wrapped in cloth to sprained joints, bruises, or minor fractures. Leave on for 30 to 40 minutes. This is an externally applied treatment only. Do not consume comfrey root internally. Do not ingest comfrey root. The pyrrolizidine alkaloids in the root are genuinely hepatotoxic with regular internal consumption. External use on intact skin is well documented as safe. Internal use carries real documented liver risk. This is not a case of regulatory overreach. The internal risk is real. 2,000 years of external use confirmed by modern clinical trials, and it was nearly banned because regulators were not careful enough to read the label that said do not swallow. Number 9. St. John's wort, Hypericum perforatum. Ancient Greek physician Hippocrates documented St. John's wort around 400 BCE, describing it as a treatment for nervous disorders. The plant has been used continuously in European medicine for over 2,000 years, and it became a central herb in Native American traditional medicine after contact tribes, including the Cherokee, quickly adopted it for inflammatory conditions. In the 1990s, it was the most prescribed antidepressant in all of Germany. A series of pharmaceutical industry-funded studies in the early 2000s focused on St. John's wort's failure in severe depression cases, a context for which herbalists had never recommended it. The media ran with those headlines, and the nuance disappeared. The herb went from best-selling natural antidepressant to debunked in under a decade, based largely on studies that were never testing the right population. Studies show St. John's wort outperforms placebo in mild to moderate depression, with effect sizes comparable to selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. A Cochrane review of 29 clinical trials involving over 5,000 patients found consistent benefit for mild to moderate depressive episodes. The active compounds hypericin and hyperforin modulate serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine pathways simultaneously. A standardized extract of 0.3% hypericin at 300 milligrams 3 times daily is the dose used in most clinical trials. The herb must be taken consistently for 4 to 6 weeks before effects become measurable the same time frame as pharmaceutical antidepressants. St. John's wort activates a liver enzyme called CYP3A that dramatically accelerates the breakdown of dozens of pharmaceutical drugs. It has documented interactions with antidepressants, blood thinners, HIV medications, transplant anti-rejection drugs, and oral contraceptives. If you take prescription medication, research interactions before using this plant. The interactions are serious and well documented. Germany's most prescribed antidepressant. Dismissed in America based on the wrong studies, targeting the wrong patients. Still growing wild across most of the United States right now. Number 10. Valerian, Valeriana officinalis. Galen of Pergamon, personal physician to the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, prescribed valerian for insomnia and nervous disorders in the 2nd century CE. That alone would be impressive, but valerian's use goes back at least another 500 years before Galen, appearing in writings from ancient Greece and India. During World War I and World War II, valerian was used extensively in Europe to treat civilian populations dealing with anxiety from air raids and wartime trauma. The introduction of benzodiazepines in the 1960s replaced valerian in clinical practice almost overnight. Once pharmaceutical sleep aids were available through prescription, doctors stopped recommending plant-based alternatives, and the traditional knowledge framework that surrounded them collapsed within a generation. Research confirms valerianic acid inhibits breakdown of GABA in the brain in a way that produces sedative and anxiolytic effects without the dependency profile of pharmaceutical sedatives. Multiple randomized trials show valerian reduces sleep latency, meaning time to fall asleep, and improves overall sleep quality. The mechanism is now well understood at the molecular level. Take valerian root extract standardized to at least 0.8% valerianic acid, approximately 1 hour before bedtime. Traditional herbalists used it as a tea, though the smell is notoriously difficult. The root smells strongly of old socks. The extract capsule is far more practical for most people. Valerian should not be combined with pharmaceutical sedatives, sleep aids, or alcohol. The combined sedative effect can be dangerously amplified. Also, a small percentage of users, estimated around 5%, experience a paradoxical stimulant effect instead of sedation. Start with a low dose. Marcus Aurelius trusted this plant. Wartime Europe trusted this plant. And then a pharmaceutical patent arrived, and we were told to forget it ever worked. Number 11. Calendula, Calendula officinalis. Calendula was used in ancient India, the Arab world, and throughout the Mediterranean for wound healing starting around 1000 CE, but its most documented historical application comes from the American Civil War, when Confederate physicians used it extensively for wound care when medical supplies ran out. Field surgeons credited it with preventing gangrene in cases where conventional treatments were unavailable. When sulfa drugs and then antibiotics arrived in the mid-20th century, plant-based wound treatments were retired from medicine and moved entirely into the cosmetics industry. Calendula now appears in face creams and baby products, its antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties reduced to marketing language about gentle botanical ingredients. The actual pharmacology is almost never discussed. Studies show calendula extract demonstrates significant antimicrobial activity against several species of bacteria and fungi. Research also confirms promotion of collagen production in wound beds, explaining the traditional observation that calendula-treated wounds closed faster and with less scarring. A 2013 clinical trial compared calendula ointment to petroleum jelly for surgical wound healing and found significantly better outcomes in the calendula group. Steep dried calendula flowers in warm olive oil for 4 to 6 weeks in a sealed jar, or heat them gently in a double boiler for 3 hours as an accelerated method. Apply the resulting infused oil to minor wounds, burns, rashes, or fungal skin conditions. This is one of the simplest preparations on this entire list. This plant is still growing in most American gardens right now. Civil War surgeons trusted it with battlefield wounds. Today it is in your baby's lotion, stripped of every word that might explain what it actually does. Number 12. Wormwood, Artemisia absinthium. Wormwood appears in the Ebers Papyrus alongside chamomile, the same 1550 BCE Egyptian medical document that forms the foundation of recorded herbal medicine. It was used throughout the ancient world from Egypt to China as an antiparasitic, with one of its primary ancient applications being the expulsion of intestinal worms, hence the name. Chinese traditional medicine has documented its use for over 2,000 years. Wormwood became synonymous with absinthe, the high thujone spirit that was banned in the early 20th century based on moral panic as much as pharmacology. The banning of absinthe effectively cast a shadow over the entire plant, suppressing knowledge of its legitimate medicinal applications entirely. The baby was thrown out with the bathwater, and then the bathwater was used as propaganda. Research confirms artemisinin, a compound found in artemisia plants, is the basis for the most effective class of modern malaria drugs. The 2015 Nobel Prize in Medicine was awarded to Tu Youyou specifically for discovering this connection knowledge she found in a 1,700-year-old Chinese medical text. Studies also confirm wormwood extract has measurable activity against intestinal parasites, validating its oldest known use. A weak tea made from a small amount of dried wormwood leaf, no more than 1 teaspoon per cup, steeped for 5 minutes, was used traditionally as a digestive bitter before meals. Digestive bitters stimulate bile production and stomach acid secretion. This application carries minimal risk at these low doses. Wormwood in concentrated form or taken in excess is genuinely toxic. High doses of thujone cause convulsions. This is not folklore, it is documented toxicology. Use only dried herb at low amounts, never the essential oil internally, and do not use during pregnancy under any circumstances. This is a plant that rewards respect. This plant earned a Nobel Prize in 2015 based on a Chinese text written in 340 CE. The knowledge was there for 1,700 years. We just had to be reminded to look. Number 13. Passion flower, Passiflora incarnata. Passion flower was used by the Cherokee, the Homa, and several other southeastern Native American tribes for its sedative and anti-anxiety properties long before European contact. Spanish missionaries encountering it in the 1500s gave it its name based on the flower's symbolic resemblance to the Passion of Christ. By the late 1800s, it had been formally adopted into American and European pharmacopoeias as a treatment for neuralgia and nervous anxiety. The plant was removed from the U.S. pharmacopoeia in 1936 as pharmaceutical benzodiazepines moved toward clinical availability. The decision was not based on evidence that it failed, it was based on the arrival of a newer, patentable synthetic. Official erasure of a plant that had been in the medical record for centuries, gone in a single regulatory update. Research confirms passion flower modulates GABA neurotransmission in a manner similar to benzodiazepines, but without the same dependency and withdrawal profile. A randomized clinical trial published in the Journal of Clinical Pharmacy and Therapeutics found passion flower extract comparable to oxazepam for treating generalized anxiety disorder, with lower impairment of job performance reported in the passion flower group. Steep 1 to 2 teaspoons of dried passion flower herb in boiling water for 10 minutes. Drink 1 cup an hour before sleep for insomnia, or 1 cup during acute anxiety. The Cherokee also used a root tea for different applications, but the aerial herb tea is what the clinical research supports. It was in the official U.S. pharmacopoeia until 1936. It did not fail. It was replaced. There is a difference, and most people never think to ask which one it was. Number 14. Turmeric, curcuma longa. Turmeric has been in continuous documented medical use in India for at least 4,000 years, appearing in Ayurvedic texts that predate most of Western medicine's foundational documents. It was called Golden Goddess in ancient Sanskrit. Its use spread from India to China, Southeast Asia, and eventually into Arabic medicine, always for conditions that modern medicine now classifies under the umbrella of inflammation. Western medicine largely ignored turmeric until 1990s, when anti-inflammatory pharmaceutical research began examining plant compounds in earnest. For most of the 20th century, it was filed under folk remedy in Western medical literature, a classification that reflected professional bias more than pharmacological reality. Meanwhile, 4 billion people across Asia never stopped using it. Curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, has been studied in over 10,000 published research papers. Studies show it inhibits NF-κB, a key molecular switch in inflammatory signaling pathways. Research confirms benefit for osteoarthritis, with multiple randomized trials showing comparable performance to ibuprofen for knee pain, and documented evidence indicates potential in reducing markers associated with metabolic syndrome. Take turmeric with black pepper always. Piperine in black pepper increases curcumin absorption by up to 2,000%. This is not a modern discovery. Traditional Ayurvedic preparations have combined turmeric and black pepper for at least 2,000 years. The practical ratio is 1 teaspoon turmeric to 1/4 teaspoon black pepper, consumed with a fat source to enhance absorption further. 4 billion people never stopped using this. Western medicine spent much of the 20th century ignoring it. 10,000 research papers later, the pharmacologists are catching up to the grandmothers. Pause the list for a moment, because if you've been paying attention, you've noticed something. These plants were not forgotten randomly. They were not simply left behind by progress. They were systematically replaced by patentable synthetic compounds, by aggressive regulatory reclassification, by an entire industry that profits when you do not know what grows in your own backyard. This knowledge did not disappear. It was displaced. So here's my question for you, and I want to hear your answer in the comments below. Which plant on this list shocked you the most, and was it the danger that surprised you, or the history that was kept from you? Drop your answer below. Every comment is an act of keeping this knowledge alive. Now, let's finish what we started. Number 15. Belladonna, Atropa belladonna. Medieval Italian women used belladonna drops. Belladonna means beautiful woman in Italian to dilate their pupils as a cosmetic treatment because wide pupils were considered seductive in Renaissance Italy. But this plant's medical history runs far deeper. Ancient Greek physicians, Roman surgeons, and Arabian doctors of the medieval period all used belladonna as an anesthetic, a painkiller, and a treatment for respiratory spasm. The pharmaceutical isolation of atropine and scopolamine from belladonna in the 19th century transferred all of its medical application into synthetic derivatives. The plant itself was left behind as toxic and unmanageable. Its refined compounds are still in the modern pharmacopoeia used in surgery, ophthalmology, cardiac resuscitation, and treatment of nerve agent exposure. The plant that gave us all of those compounds is now labeled purely as a dangerous weed. Atropine, derived from belladonna, is on the World Health Organization's list of essential medicines. It is used in operating rooms worldwide to prevent dangerous decreases in heart rate during surgery and as the standard antidote for nerve agent poisoning. Research confirms its mechanism blocking muscarinic acetylcholine receptors is one of the most well-understood drug actions in all of pharmacology. Do not attempt to use belladonna as a home remedy. Ever. The toxic dose is extremely close to any potentially therapeutic dose, and individual variation in sensitivity is enormous. Children have died from consuming as few as 2 berries. The berries are glossy black and attract children. If you grow this plant, treat it as you would a loaded firearm. Ornamental belladonna plantings near children are genuinely dangerous. It saves lives in operating rooms and stops nerve agents on the battlefield. It is also capable of killing a child with 2 berries. This plant has never been anything other than exactly what it is: ancient, powerful, and profoundly unforgiving of ignorance. Number 16. Elderberry, Sambucus nigra. Hippocrates called the elder tree his medicine chest, and he had access to every plant known to the ancient Greek world. Elder has been used medicinally across Europe for at least 2,500 years. Hollow elder stems were used as bellows by ancient peoples, and both flowers and berries appear in every major tradition of European herbal medicine, from Germanic folk practice to the formal pharmacopoeias of the 16th century. Elderberry was essentially removed from serious clinical discussion in the United States through the 20th century, classified alongside other folk remedies as unproven and anecdotal. The 1918 influenza pandemic, in which communities using elderberry preparations reportedly fared better than those without, was simply never documented in a way that satisfied emerging pharmaceutical research standards. The evidence existed. The mechanisms to recognize it did not. Studies show elderberry extract reduces duration of influenza illness by an average of 4 days compared to placebo in controlled trials. Research confirms the mechanism. Elderberry flavonoids bind directly to human influenza virus H1N1 and prevent it from infecting host cells. A 2016 randomized trial published in Nutrients found elderberry supplementation significantly reduced both the duration and severity of cold symptoms in air travelers. Simmer 1 cup of dried elderberries with 3 cups of water, 1 cinnamon stick, 5 cloves, and 1 tablespoon of fresh ginger for 45 minutes until reduced by half. Strain, cool, and stir in 1 cup of raw honey. This is elderberry syrup. Take 1 tablespoon daily during cold and flu season. This preparation has been made in European households for centuries. Raw elderberries and all parts of the elder plant except ripe berries and flowers contain cyanogenic glycosides that cause nausea, vomiting, and potentially more serious effects. Always cook elderberries before consumption. Never consume raw elderberries, leaves, bark, or roots. Hippocrates called this his medicine chest. That was 2,500 years ago. We are still confirming that he was right. Number 17. Hibiscus. Hibiscus sabdarifa. Hibiscus sabdarifa, the medicinal variety, not the ornamental, has been used in West African and Egyptian traditional medicine for at least 2,000 years. Ancient Egyptian records describe it being consumed as a tea called karkade for heart health and body temperature regulation. It spread through the Arab world, across North Africa, and into the Caribbean and Latin America, where it is still consumed daily by millions under names like agua de Jamaica. As antihypertensive pharmaceuticals became the standard of care for high blood pressure in the mid-20th century, any plant-based treatment for cardiovascular conditions was quietly reclassified as unproven folk remedy. Hibiscus was not suppressed through active effort, it was simply never admitted to the conversation in American clinical medicine, while the rest of the world kept drinking it. This is the one that will surprise you. Research confirms hibiscus tea has measurable antihypertensive effects comparable to some pharmaceutical options in patients with mild to moderate high blood pressure. A 2010 randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of Nutrition found that daily consumption of hibiscus tea significantly reduced both systolic and diastolic blood pressure compared to placebo. The compounds responsible anthocyanins and organic acids inhibit the same angiotensin-converting enzyme targeted by ACE inhibitor blood pressure medications. Steep 3 to 5 dried hibiscus calyces, the red flower portions, sold in Latin markets as Jamaica or Flor de Jamaica, in 8 ounces of hot water for 5 to 10 minutes. It produces a deep crimson tea that is mildly tart. Traditional Egyptian and West African use calls for 2 to 3 cups daily. Consume without added sugar for cardiovascular benefit. Because hibiscus genuinely lowers blood pressure, it can interact with antihypertensive medications, potentially dropping blood pressure too low. Anyone on blood pressure medication should consult a physician before consuming hibiscus regularly. This is not a theoretical concern, the effect is real enough to require management. 2,000 years of use. A 2010 clinical trial confirming the mechanism. And it is sitting right now in the ornamental section of your garden center, labeled as a decorative annual. Nobody is telling you what it actually does. Number 18. Angel's trumpet, Brugmansia species. Indigenous Andean cultures of South America used Brugmansia in sacred ceremonial contexts for at least 3,000 years before European contact. Spanish colonizers documented its use in the 1500 shamans of the Chibcha people in what is now Colombia reportedly used it to sedate human sacrifices and to communicate with spirits of the dead. Every part of this plant is pharmacologically active. The Andean traditions that used it maintain strict knowledge about dose and context that took generations to develop. The sacred and controlled use of this plant within indigenous knowledge systems was dismantled by colonization. What replaced it in the Western context was not careful clinical use, but reputation for toxicity and a presence as an ornamental garden plant. The knowledgeable framework that governed its use was lost. The plant remained. That combination is dangerous. Brugmansia contains tropane alkaloids, primarily scopolamine, and atropine at concentrations substantially higher than most related plants. Scopolamine is in legitimate clinical use as a transdermal patch for motion sickness and post-surgical nausea. Research confirms the pharmacological activity is real and powerful. What traditional knowledge understood and what modern toxicology confirms is that the therapeutic window is extraordinarily narrow. Angel's trumpet causes the most serious accidental poisonings of any ornamental plant sold in American garden centers. Emergency room documentation includes hallucinations, severe tachycardia, complete memory loss lasting days, inability to speak, urinary retention, and death. Teenagers have been hospitalized after making tea from the leaves on a dare. This plant is not safe in any DIY context. It is consistently present in ER toxicology reports. Grow it with the same respect you would give a loaded weapon, or do not grow it near people you care about. It is sold at garden centers across America as a beautiful patio plant. Andean shamans spent generations learning how to use it without killing people. We sell it next to the tomatoes. Number 19. Ashwagandha, Withania somnifera. Ashwagandha has been continuously prescribed in Ayurvedic medicine for over 3,000 years. The name translates loosely from Sanskrit as smell of horse, a reference to the root's distinctive aroma, but also to the traditional belief that it conferred the strength and vitality of a horse. It is classified in Ayurveda as a rasiana, a class of substances used for rejuvenation and longevity, the most prestigious category in the entire system. Western medicine largely dismissed Ayurvedic medicine as a whole through the 19th and early 20th centuries as part of the broader colonial project of dismissing non-European knowledge systems. Ashwagandha spent most of the 20th century invisible to American clinical research. The research that has now been done on it is largely playing catch-up on 3,000 years of documented observation. Research confirms ashwagandha root extract significantly reduces cortisol, the primary stress hormone, in multiple randomized controlled trials. A 2012 study published in the Indian Journal of Psychological Medicine found that daily ashwagandha supplementation reduced cortisol levels by 27% compared to placebo, with corresponding reductions in perceived stress, anxiety, and sleep disturbance. Additional research documents testosterone support in men, thyroid hormone modulation, and anti-inflammatory activity through multiple distinct pathways. Traditional Ayurvedic preparation combines ashwagandha root powder with warm whole milk and a small amount of honey, a preparation called ashwagandha kshira. The fat in milk enhances absorption of the lipophilic active compounds called withanolides. Modern research suggests 300 to 600 milligrams of standardized root extract daily produces measurable cortisol reduction within 8 weeks. Ashwagandha should not be used during pregnancy. It has documented uterine stimulant effects in animal studies. It also modulates thyroid hormone activity and should be used cautiously by anyone with thyroid conditions or taking thyroid medication. Rare cases of liver injury associated with ashwagandha supplements have been reported in the literature, though the clinical picture is still being defined. 3,000 years of continuous clinical use in a system treating hundreds of millions of people. Western medicine took until the 21st century to look at the data. The data was there the entire time. Number 20. Oleander, Nerium oleander. Oleander has been recognized as a deadly plant since antiquity. Ancient Greek texts warn against it. Pliny the Elder described it in the 1st century CE, noting that Romans knew it as poisonous to all animals. It was known in the medieval Arab world as daphli and appears in Arabic medical texts as a treatment for skin conditions and leprosy applications that required extraordinary care and knowledge about dose. Its entire recorded medical history is inseparable from a profound respect for its lethal potential. As oleander moved from the Mediterranean into American landscaping in the 20th century, the historical knowledge that accompanied it was stripped away entirely. It became a highway median plant in California, Texas, and Florida. A patio ornamental sold widely at garden centers. The ancient cautions were not passed along. The plant traveled, the knowledge did not. Oleander contains oleandrin and nereine cardiac glycosides that act on heart muscle in a manner similar to digoxin from foxglove. Research has explored oleandrin in cancer research contexts, and pharmaceutical interest in its compounds continues. But the toxicological profile is the dominant scientific story here. Documented evidence indicates that a single leaf of oleander can cause fatal cardiac arrhythmia in an adult. Children are at extreme risk with even smaller exposures. This is the most important warning in this entire video. Oleander is one of the most toxic plants on Earth. It is also one of the most commonly planted ornamental shrubs in the southern United States. There is no safe home preparation of this plant. Burning oleander releases toxic smoke. The sap causes skin irritation. Water that has had oleander branches in it becomes toxic. Cases of oleander poisoning from using the wood as skewers for grilling have been documented. People have died. This is not hyperbole. It is consistent with toxicological records spanning 2,000 years. If you have children or pets, know whether oleander is in your yard. If it is, know what it looks like, make sure your family knows what it looks like, and keep everyone away from every part of it. It is the most commonly planted deadly shrub in America. It lines the highways of 3 of our most populous states. Is sold to families with children as a cheerful patio plant. Ancient Greece knew what it was. Rome knew what it was. And somehow, somewhere between then and now, we forgot to pass that along. 20 plants. 20 stories of knowledge that was earned, preserved, passed forward, and then quietly buried under a century of synthetic chemistry and commercial agriculture. None of these plants became less real. None of them stopped working. What changed was the system around them, a system that profits from your not knowing what grows in your own backyard. When you look at a garden center now, you are not looking at ornamental plants and culinary herbs. You are looking at the remnants of a 10,000-year conversation between human beings and the natural world. A conversation that was almost ended. And today, you just got a little more of it back. Here is your challenge starting today. Walk into any garden center this week and look at the plants differently. Ask yourself, what did someone once know about this that I was never told? Because the label they gave it and the name it actually carries are almost never the same thing. If this video changed how you walk through a garden, hit like. It takes 1 second, and it tells the algorithm that this kind of knowledge deserves to travel further. And leave me a comment which hit harder, the danger you never knew, or the history that was kept from you. I read every single one. Subscribe to Cropbound not because you want more videos, but because you want to be the kind of person who holds on to what the world keeps trying to throw away. The plants were always here. The only thing that was ever missing was someone willing to tell you the truth about them.